Well, hello there my friends, it's Admiral Revan here, and today, welcome aboard to 11.1 in World of Warships. I'm an Australian community contributor for World of Warships on the Southeast Asia server, and I bid you welcome to this lovely video that we have today. So, I had been thinking about in regarding to the Kurfurst, the Khabarovsk, the Preussen, and also the Delny changes and everything that's been happening. And as you know, in the lead up to 11.1, the Kurfurst and the Khabarovsk have been around in their tech tree line for tier 10 for the retrospect of the German and Russian lines for a very, very long time. As you can see here, this is 11.1. And this is officially the release of 11.1 that you're seeing right now in this video. As you can see, that the Preussen has replaced the Kurfurst, and the Kurfurst has now become a premium warship. And also, in retrospect, in the Russian destroyer line, that they had the Khabarovsk located here, and now it's been replaced and swapped over into the Delny. So we are officially live with the new update and everything, and I will talk about everything that you need to know about it. So, why has wargaming changed this, all of a sudden for the German and the Russian tech tree lines? Well, most recently that there was a bit of a debate going on about the last 2 to 3 years about in regarding to all the changes they were going to do for all the tech tree ships for World of Warships. Without saying too much, I mean, like back in the early versions of 0.9, the lead up of the Moskva was that one of the first Russian cruisers to be removed from the tech tree line to become a premium warship. And then back then, it was like where the introduction of Soviet cruisers were being brought into play. So when the Russian cruisers were brought into play, as you remember, that the Riga, the Talon, and also the Petro were brought in retrospect to bring a different mindset of the gameplay. And also that the Chapiav, the Donskoy, was still around, and they added a new ship called the Nevsky, the Alexander Nevsky, to replace the Moskva. But what happened to the Moskva? Well, let's just show you here. The Moskva became, no doubt, a premium warship, and I will quickly show you the filter here. And as you can see, that it's now become a special warship of its own right. Now, the funny thing about the changes is that they pretty much kept these unique warships as coal warships that you still can obtain through the armory. And as you can see here, you can go through here and you can go all the way through and just basically, there you go, the Grober Kurfurst has become, well, no doubt, the one and only a coal warship. And also the Khabarovsk as well. As you can see, they're quite expensive to obtain, but they're not too bad overall to take your time with in doing so. And as you can see, the Moskva has become a premium coal warship as well, that you can obtain in the armory, and that's still a good thing overall. It's not the end of be all end all scenario when it comes to getting coal warships, but how come and why wargaming went this way? Simply because they went out with the old and introduced the new. That is pretty much in a nutshell what they were trying to do. And honestly, is this a right idea what a warship is doing? I think it is, in my opinion, but at the same time, is it really necessary? Well, yeah, I think so. Because there's a bit of a difference between the Grober Kurfurst and also the Preussen, for example. So let's talk about the two German battleships. So as you can see here, that this is the Grober Kurfurst. Lovely tier 10 German battleship, has been around in the tech tree line for several years. In fact, nearly 7 years in fact. And overall, that this warship has been a pretty much of a decent warship to deal with in battle, and has a definite, name to it. because of its secondaries, as well as also its main guns, and also a few other things. So what I can show you is that with the Grober Kurfurst is that it still has the 406 and also the 420mm guns. Fantastic. It's great for clan battles overall and also ranked. It is also a good rival battleship against the Kremlin and also the Montana, the Ohio, and the Yamato, and like the Thunder and Conqueror. Also, there are the tier 10 warships that you have to be careful of, like the Slava. And honestly, now we have the Prussian on the battlefield. So just by looking at all this, perks and everything what the Grober Kurfurst had, honestly, the Grober Kurfurst had a pretty much, a bonus in its own right. Now, the one thing about it all is that I had expected in the way to have main armaments, engineering protection, secondary builds. Secondaries are fantastic on this warship. I would highly encourage you to look at the idea of having a nice secondary build. Secondary build on these German battleships with 12km range. Usually a standard destroyer has 12km range torpedoes and have to get closer in a way to try and torp you. If you have teammates that have radar as well as hydroacoustics, the radar for most of the Soviet warships have 12km range. In regarding to American warships that we know, some of them will have at least a minimum of 10.5 or better. Now, there's a switch destroyer, there's also called a Ragnar, has a good radar range of 7.5 to 8, thereabouts. But the thing is that with that one, it's more of a close combat kind of thing. And any destroyer that has more than 12km range in a way will still be in good striking distance with fire torpedoes before it actually gets 4km into the actual Ragnar target. Now, the Grober Kurfurst, what is so great about this ship? Honestly, aside from the main batteries and also the secondaries and AA defense that this has, it is pretty solid. It's a solid warship, and it can tank, it can take hits, and it has a definite nice citadel build. This ship definitely has a nice armor build on this thing, and I can tell you right now that the citadel of the ship itself is right in the smack bang in the middle, a bit closer in the waterline. It is very hard for any warship to really hit the citadel of the Kurfurst unless you really get close with point blank range or know where to aim on terms of the top deck. Pretty much if you hit the top deck, you can probably score a couple citadels in a way if you do it correctly. Mind you though, that the Grober Kurfurst is made to tank in this game, and it does a very good job of doing so, especially when it kites as well. In retrospect, in clan battles and ranked, I find it that the Grober Kurfurst is a good rival warship to the Montana. Why? Because the Montana has weaker armor in terms of broadside, but the Grober Kurfurst, when it's broadside, it can actually pack a punch, especially against the Schefflin rival. And the Schefflin, as you know, that is a very nice, battle warship of its own. The only thing I don't like about the Schefflin is that it has weaker armor on the top deck. But in terms of the aspect of why the Schefflin is actually a very good warship, aside from the torpedoes, aside from the hydroacoustics, secondaries are your friend. It really burns down the enemy pretty quickly. But anyway, the Prussian, what I can tell you about the Prussian, simply, it is a marvelous warship all around. It is fantastic. The Prussian, to me, I can give you a lot of hype about it. And the thing is that, as you can see, that the Citadel build on this warship is pretty much the same as the Kurfurst overall. There are some uniqueness, differences a little bit about it, but one thing I can tell you that as a Prussian player right now, I have enjoyed the fact of using the guns on this thing. 457mm guns. This thing can pack a punch, man. I mean, I don't know about you, but it can actually destroy the Ohio, the Montana, the Yamato, the Kremlin, even its own rival counterparts of the German Navy like the Schefflin and also the Kurfürst. The one biggest thing about the Prussian that I really love about it is that if you aim the guns correctly at the citadel base of the ship, you can actually score some nice solid citadels. There is a bit of a downside about the Prussian though, and that is the general German dispersion. I swear, I hate the RNG mechanics on this bloody thing. But honestly, in my own opinion, that the Prussian and the Kurfürst have one thing in common, is that the guns, when they do have a solid, shell dispersion on the target and hit the target solidly, they can do some serious damage. And pretty much that's one thing I love about the Prussian. The Prussian overall, in my retrospect, the health pool of the Prussian is 105,800. In comparison to the Kurfürst has the same amount of health. But the thing is that when I look at the difference between the Kurfürst and also the Prussian is two things. The guns are the same, like in terms of 2 in front, 2 in the rear. But in terms of how many turrets, it's basically the Kurfürst has triple barrels, whereas the Prussian, as you can see here, that the Prussian only has twin barrels, 2 in each turret. So basically you got 4 in the front, 4 in the rear, whereas the Kurfürst had 3 in 6 in total and 6 in the rear. Now, which one's better? Honestly, I find that the Prussian is a better rival battleship overall for different types of gameplay style, and depends how you play it. The biggest thing about the Prussian that I think that I find the most is actually the secondary guns, as well as all the defensive play you can do with this thing. Looking at the secondary armaments in terms of the firepower for this sort of thing, I can tell you this much: it is around about 12.5. It only has a 0.5 of benefit versus the Kurfürst. I think that will get nerfed one day. But no, don't do this to me, Wargaming. Really, I don't encourage you to do so. But anyway, the point of the matter is that I can see that something might happen to it. The secondaries, in terms of it, the ship itself is pretty accurate. In terms of the anti-aircraft defense, wow, that's pretty spot on. Mwah. Honestly, the secondaries on the Prussian and the Kurfürst have been pretty good. They have slight differences, like unique differences with the gun turrets, but they have one thing in common: a 6-kilometer range for the anti-aircraft by default. Now, the maneuverability is 30 knots, and at the moment I can see the ridership is 19.4. In comparison to the Kurfürst, well, Kurfürst has benefits in terms of speed by 31.5 knots. So the Prussian has just 1.5 knots slower, but it does pack a punch anyhow. One thing I like about the Prussian is that you can really take it to clan battles. No worries with it. I haven't really tested it in clan battles officially yet right now, because it's actually coming out next week officially in this update, in terms of the stages of the release of this patch right now. One thing I can say very openly though, I have tested the ship though in the new airship derby mode, which is the dirigible derby mode. That is actually pretty good. I mean, like, that's actually fun. And also random battles. I have tested this out on the Prussian. I gave it a bit of a go. I got a 14-point commander on this thing. It's actually pretty decent. And, honestly, for a 14-point commander build that is actually spec'd with secondaries that I copied across from a Kurfürst and brought across to this ship, I think it's actually not too bad. It's not like the best, it's not the worst, but at least it's something you will do. But yes, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Now, so it brings us to a bit of a different part of the whole conversation though. Okay, so we have the interesting warship, as you know, called the Russian destroyer, called the Khabarovsk. Now, people were asking me, it's like, have wargaming lost their mind in terms of changing a Russian destroyer to begin with? And I actually thought about it and said to myself initially, I said, yes, I thought, like, originally when I was being a very cheeky content creator, thinking that, like, nah, wargaming is not gonna, change over destroyers and World of Warships. I thought wrong, okay? I thought wrong. So, obviously, they have changed this in the game. So, the Khabarovsk is a lovely tier 10 Russian destroyer. It feels like a cruiser, but it's really got good guns on this thing. One thing I love about the Khabarovsk is that it's very beneficial against CVs. Now, you know that European destroyer, the Holland, for example, right? So the Holland can really take out a whole bunch of aircraft. The Khabarovsk can do the same. Not as good as the Holland, but it can do a definitely good job. This ship is made to tank, and its level as well too. It can take a lot of severe hits in terms of the bow of the ship. In terms of the side, it's pretty paperweight. But the thing is that this ship is actually pretty decent. It's got some decent guns. It's got torpedo range. It's only around about 8 kilometers. 6 kilometers. I retract that statement. So it's got a short range of 6 kilometers with 53 knots. It is a bit of slow torpedo range to destroyer. That is one of the downsides I didn't like about the Khabarovsk originally. But when I heard about the Khabarovsk was going away, I thought, you know what, bugger it. I mean, like, I may as well do it to get the ship and enjoy the rewards of actually getting a whole bunch of credits in for it in preparation to get the Delny. Now, the damage it produces on this ship is actually not too bad. But it's very maneuverable, it's fast, and it does a good job. It has a good speed of 43 knots. Now, 43 knots on this destroyer, yet alone, and it speaks volumes. It actually is fast, it's maneuverable, it does the job, it's great. And honestly, I love it. It's a great warship overall. If you're wondering where it was in the tech tree line, it used to be on the Soviet tech tree line under here, just underneath the Tashkent. So, was it worthwhile to change? Change it over? Well, that remains to be seen. So let me just show you about the armament. So the armament on this thing is actually pretty nice. So it's actually kind of like pretty good foreplane overall, as well as side plane. It feels light on the sides though, as well as the top deck. But the funny thing about this is that the ship is really well designed. For movement and everything. So this is where it really comes down to the crunch of the whole tip of the iceberg when I talk about the Delny. Now, as you can see, here's the Delny. Very nice looking tier 10 Russian destroyer. A very good replacement to the Khabarovsk. However, have you noticed something in different appearance aside from the camo? Don't mind me, the camo looks great, okay? But honestly, I'm not talking about the camo. Well, first of all, if you look closely, it has 2 nice torpedo bays of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you have 10 torpedoes that you can fire in total. It takes a while to recharge though, just to give you a heads up. Now, just by looking at it, I can tell you this right now. It is nothing to do with the actual layout of the ship. It is actually to do with how many guns it has. As you notice that in the Khabarovsk here, it's got like a 2 in the front and 2 in the rear, with twin turrets. In terms of Delny, you have 2 in the front, 1 in the rear, and the rest of it is anti-aircraft defense. So there's a bit of a difference with this thing, and different game style play differences again. And please note that this ship can tank certain things, but it can also deal with a lot of damage to aircraft as well. However, the problem with the Delny is that it doesn't have much of a defense of its own. aside from the simple mechanics that it has. Like for example, it has torpedo bays, it also has smoke. But the one unique thing that I have found about it, as well as the Khabarovsk, is that it can actually select repair party. And it's actually very nice to repair your ship. And honestly, it's a choice. It's actually funny, when I first saw this, I thought I was looking forward to hydroacoustics. But then again, you know, like, there's not really a need to worry about submarines, right? I did say submarines out loud, alright? But anyway, moving on. So what I was thinking that with the torpedo bays, it is another unique thing about it is that it has faster speed torps at 60 knots this time. But guess what? 10-kilometer range. That's actually not too bad for a tier 10 destroyer. It may not be as fast as the Shimikaze with 12 kilometers at 70 knots, for example, but at least you have a fighting chance. And it's good for kiting, good for ambushing using the torpedoes. There are shallow torpedoes, they're not deep water, and they do a fantastic job. The depth charges are still there in the game because they plan to bring subs back in later on at some point, but we're not worried about subs for now. We're worried about having fun in the game, playing the Kurfurst and Delny, for example. So that's one of the biggest things about it. Here is the Khabarovsk, and as you can see, same idea. It has like the repair party as well as smoke. But it has 53 knots in speed for torps and 6-kilometer range. So the biggest question I had to ask myself is like, why is the Delny replaced the Khabarovsk in the tech tree line? And despite of the downside of having one gun at the rear of the ship, honestly, the Delny has got, you know, some decent firepower for AP. Even though it's good HE fire-starting warship, I have found that the Delny is a very maneuverable, very versatile, very situational type of warship gameplay. The one thing I can tell you right now that the Delny has is in its own right is that it's got its speed. And it's got 45 knots, 45.7. And the Khabarovsk is 43.0 speed. For the Delny to start off fast, in terms of when it first starts in the battle, it is actually phenomenal. When you want to use it to retreat or get out of the battle pretty quickly, it does the job for you. There are times that you might use, the odd occasion, you might use smoke. You might, if you don't have the smoke option on the ship, you might want to heal yourself. But with the engine boost, you can get at least over 50 knots. Mind you, I mean, like, this ship is actually very maneuverable and it can do the job very, very well. So, the one thing I can tell you, folks, is that if you want to invest into Russian destroyers, the Delny is pretty good. And I'm not gonna kid you about it, because the Delny has a lot of fantastic perks about it. It's good, it's fun and enjoyable. I like it. I'm starting to enjoy it now myself. There are people out there who have been asking me, is it worthwhile, you know, just doing the grind, do the time to get the Delny? The answer is yes. Okay? So I would be stupid to say otherwise, really, because this ship really does pack a punch. It does a good job overall. But yeah, it's just good, man. It's just good. The ship has what it takes and everything. But yeah, if you're wanting to spec your commander, depending what kind of commander you got on there, for a basic 10-point commander, I would have definitely grease the gears, have this last stand ability, very good must-have ability, as well as superintendent, and then look at the idea of having adrenaline rush, and maybe have concealment or dazzle, but it depends how you want to do it. Now, the thing is that if you're in a div mates with the Delny, for example, just like the Khabarovsk. You can have two of you the same type ship, but one of you it works out well if one of you has the repair function, the other one does not and needs to smoke. Why? Because the person who is actually getting hit the most will be able to recharge, reheal, and actually help ambush the enemy. At the same time, that is actually pretty beneficial for you in the long term in terms of different gameplay and own styles. But then again, if you were to be spec'd in the same way for both your ships, honestly, it actually works out quite well. It's a very nice thing. One thing I will mention, touch base about regarding to Depression and Kurfurst before I head off, is that just remember with the Kurfurst and Depression, they're very similar and they have differently nice guns and everything. But the one biggest thing about it all is that when you're playing the Preussen and also the Kurfürst, you can use it for tanking, but remember that is good also for kiting. The secondaries are very good, just like any other secondaries, just like the Schefflin. But honestly, the Schefflin has the benefit of extra range, but the Preussen has also the firepower as well too. If the destroyers have been spotted already and it has the secondary range within 12 plus kilometers, you're doing something good. And hydroacoustics is fun on this thing. It is a good vessel to play with. It has repair. It's not unlimited, but it has a limited amount of repair, as well as you can choose between spotter and fighter aircraft. And also hydroacoustics is right there. Overall though, the ship has a lot to be desired, just like the Kurfürst. And honestly, I think that you will love the Preussen and the Delny. So, anyways, my friends, I think that was pretty much a wrap up right there. If you have any questions about the Preussen, Kurfürst, or the Delny, definitely, just let us know, get back to us, and then we'll hit you up, no doubt. But, thanks for tuning in, folks. And welcome to 11.1. There's a lot more to come. But I'm sure that you have a lot of questions and I'm sure your answers will come through. But yeah, there's one other thing before I run off, and that is in regarding to the Kurfürst and also the Preussen, and also the Delny and the Khabarovsk. If you had the Khabarovsk and the Kurfürst imported beforehand on the official launch of this patch at 11.0 to 11.1, well, the short version is you get refunded with the credits for it at 11.1. So you get some nice nifty in-game credits and it's fun. It's great. But anyways, folks, that's pretty much it for me. But if you have any issues or whatnot, just let us know. But feel free to get back to me and we'll catch you around next time. Have a good one.